Good evening. And here's Candy the Wonder Dog. Just, I swear, it's her cue when I say good evening or hello or YouTube says I'm live, whatever, however I start out. Immediately she jumps up on me. Welcome to my miserable, pathetic little YouTube channel, Gordon Causey, coming to you live and unscripted from my little corner of southeastern Ontario. I'm no, I don't live in the big smoke. I used to. The big smoke being Toronto, as referenced in that picture over my shoulder, over my left. I guess on the screen it probably shows as the right. Um, I'm about an hour east of the eastern edge of the GTA. I'm about an hour and a half to 2 hour drive from that CN tower you see pictured. See, I have a couple people watching. Candy, before I can start a video, she has to get a treat. And I went shopping today, so she has her bacon treats, which she absolutely loves. Danny is here. Good to see you, my friend. Love the praying hands, the heart and the cross. And Danny has, she just about knocked my coffee out of my hand. Shake a paw, lay down, speak, 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 speak. That's a little better. Candy, the Wonder Dog, Border Collie. Should have named her COVID. Uh, I want to first start off with an apology. I was, seems a very Canadian thing to do, does it not? An apology. I was fully intending to do a video last night on Friday night. However, I got hit with some news. A member of my extended family, a cousin, uh, I found out he died rather tragically. So a little bit to process, or if you're an American, to process. We Canadians, older Canadians say process. Canadians speak English, not American. And anyway, so yeah, and that's my fault, Danny. I was playing around. I didn't know how that would work. Danny was saying that he can only send a message every 15 seconds, slow mode on. What the heck? I don't think 15 seconds is too long, but next time I'll leave it off. Slow mode will not be on. I know that's annoying for me because I'm just playing around with things on here. Uh, the functionality, as I always say, I'm a one man show. I don't, the production values, it's a laptop with a built in camera and a built in microphone. Not scripted, don't have a team, don't have tech, just me. And anyway, I'm going to, and Danny forgives me for having put slow mode on. I know that when I'm engaging in live chat, and quite often I'll make a typo and I'll want to correct it, and I hate having to wait to make the correction. Although usually when typos happen, I can make my way through it. Everyone does that. We all mistype. We all know the difference between there, and there. And sometimes, though, the way you formulate in your head, then you change it and you put down the wrong form. You type THERE when you meant THY apostrophe RE, whatever the case. I wanted to, because I'm going to be talking about all things Canada, US right now, and with the tariff and with Canadians wrapping themselves in the flag. It was 3 years ago in 2022 in February when Canadians were, a lot of Canadians were down in Ottawa protesting the COVID mandates, the no jab, no job, the social distancing, the lockdowns, the insanity that we were going through. And God bless those truckers. And I found myself tonight reminiscing about it a little bit, thinking about the flag, because that Ottawa convoy protest, the flag was everywhere at those protests. And those of us, such as myself, who were opposed to all the COVID insanity, were Um, ugh, yeah, a lot were waving the Canadian flag, but the compliant Canadians who went along, well, if the government tells me to follow stickers on the floor, you gotta follow the rules that the government says. And if they want me to wear a diaper on my face all the time, you have to too. Those type of individuals began to be triggered by the Canadian flag. They're like, it's a hate symbol now. And now, 3 years later, and now those same individuals, I almost said a bit of a pejorative word, those same individuals now are, embracing the Canadian flag. I have LJ here. A 4-year mandate with Mark Carney could seal the deal for Canada becoming the 51st state. I'm going to express opinions on that shortly, but before I do, I want to share a little video with you that I was reminiscing over. So here, screen, let's make sure it's sharing, and just reminding you how much. Hey, Miss Hellraiser is here, MHR. Haven't seen you for a while. All right. I'm going to just a little snippet from it, playing the song We're Not Gonna Take It. Stop sharing when they show Idiot Trudeau. Uh, they play that during the part of the song where it says, "Oh, you're so condescending. Your goal is never ending. We don't want nothing, not a thing from you. Your life is trite and jaded, boring and confiscated. If that's your best won't do." And that while they're showing that, they show a bunch of pictures of Trudeau. So let me read what's being saying. Danny's writing, never comply again. MHR is saying hello again. Danny is saying, my gall, your gall. Now, I was going to be talking about my initial intention with this video was to talk about the upcoming um, election of our next prime minister and the fact that the Liberal Party of Canada is choosing Canada's next prime minister, and it's going to be Mark Carney. That it's a coronation. It's not a race. This is a coronation. Mark Carney will be the next prime minister of Canada. And the fact of the matter is that the Liberal Party of Canada is allowing 14-year-olds to vote in that process to coronate Mark Carney. 14-year-olds get to vote. Canadians across, the broad spectrum, registered Canadian voters don't get to vote. Only Canadians who hold a Liberal Party membership are allowed to vote, and you can be 14 and cast a vote to have Mark Carney imposed on us as the Prime Minister, much the same way that the senior level of the Democratic National Committee told Democrats, we don't care what you say, we're imposing Kamala Harris on you. Well, that's what's happening with us. And in that process to install Mark Carney, 14-year-olds get to participate. This is Canada's Liberal Party. This is the governing party of Canada right here. LJ is writing that hopefully Carney will be prime minister for no longer than a few weeks, which is still too much time. The NDP has told its party apparatus, the MPs and such, and the riding associations to be ready for an election call on March 10th, on the 10th of March. That is the day after the vote is slated to take place. And the NDP is signaling that they expect Mark Carney, because he's going to win, that he will immediately go to the Governor General and forget prorogue, meaning our government is suspended right now, so there's nothing to dissolve. He doesn't have to dissolve the legislature. It's not even sitting right now. The House of Commons isn't sitting, and we'll be going to the polls 3-4 weeks and voting. And Mark Carney has a shot. Mark Carney has a shot. I mean, it'll depend how the campaign plays out, but he has a shot at winning government or at minimum pushing the conservatives down into a minority situation, which would make governing for Pierre Poilievre very problematic, because Poilievre does not have a natural dance partner across the aisle. He would be looking at the Liberals and the NDP, who have just spent the past 7, 8 years, or yeah, 7 or so years, joined at the hip. You'd have the Green Party, and they would have a problem with the Conservatives wanting to develop Alberta's natural resource sector and to build pipelines to get our, wonderful Alberta oil to market, and LNG and everything else. And after that, there's the Bloc Québécois, which is very progressive in its ideology, very woke. And so it's hard to see them being a natural dance partner. The only thing Poilievre might be able to do in a minority situation is to play one off against the other, which is something Stephen Harper was very masterful at when he was a minority when he was the prime minister leading a minority parliament. Let me read on what's being said. Denny says Carney scares the heck out of him. MHR says the fact we're worried that Canada could vote Carney in is the scary part. Could happen. And Denny's amen to MHR's comment. But I want to move on from that. And I'll do a whole video. I'll do a whole live just on the Liberal leadership race and where things are going. But I want to focus more on what's happening vis-a-vis Canada and the U.S. and this talk of Canada becoming the 51st state. And I've had some more time to ruminate over this and think over it and do a bit of reading. I like to apply current situations to historical events. Sometimes you might think the connections are tenuous or not. I'll leave that up to you to decide. But in many ways, I think Canada is already the 51st state, undeclared, not politically, but for all intents and purposes, we are basically, since 1988, have been a territory of the United States of America. We ceded our economic sovereignty when we signed that first free trade agreement, all the way back in 1988. We signed it and it was ratified in 1989, shortly thereafter. And we ceded our economic sovereignty. And when you cede your economic sovereignty, man, oh man. And what I'm going to apply this to is when the United States first became a country, all the way back. They formed a union. They joined the states to get the 13 colonies, what were at that time 13 colonies, formed something of a union, a confederation, all the way back in 1775. And that's when they actually started to fight against the British. And then it was in 1776, July 4, when they made their famous Declaration of Independence, which really was nothing more than a declaration of war. But each state had its own culture, the demographics were different. In different states. Take New York, for example. New York City had originally been founded by the Dutch. New York City was actually called New Amsterdam. And it wasn't until the Anglo-Dutch Wars that New Amsterdam was ceded to the British and was then given the name New York after a Duke of York. And in exchange, the Dutch got some spice islands down in South America that they wanted. They got to keep those, and they gave up, a little quid pro quo. We'll let you keep those islands down around South America, and we get New York. Decide for yourself whether it was a fair trade or not. I have LJ writing, there are a lot of people who consider themselves progressive or left-leaning that are going to vote for Pierre. the Liberal Party is governing as a far left authoritarian socialist party. The point that I've made in previous videos is that in the political arena, there is a herd mentality, and one thing that the liberals have been looking for, and they have gotten it, at least if the polling is accurate, they have gotten some of that coveted momentum, and they've gone up, according to several polls, from down in and around 20% to up in and around 30%. And so what is happening is the conservatives are not losing. They're still punching in and around the 40% mark, which is where they've been for months. But what's happening is there's kind of this ABC, anyone but the conservatives, or ABP, anyone but Polyev. And so they're coalescing. The left is the progressive left is coalescing around the liberals. But like I say, a week is a lifetime in politics. A month is an eternity. So we'll see how that plays out. I'll have more to say about that probably tomorrow night. But anyway, as far as us ceding you know, our economic sovereignty, we did that all the way back in 1988, and that's similar to what happened in the United States, where you had these disparaging colonies with different populations, different values, different cultures. They joined together to fight off a common enemy. They were tired, the refrain, one of the many refrains, but a big refrain of the American Revolution was no taxation without representation. They didn't like the fact that the Brits were imposing taxes on them without them having representation in England. So no taxation without representation was kind of a unifying cry across all the colonies, even though they, like I say, the economies were different. In the South, it was more, the South was far more agrarian, cotton, etc. Slaves were much more integral to the economy there. The North was more about trading, ports like Boston and New York, and commercial activity, industrial activity. And so disparaging economies, but they joined together, common foe. And that persisted, the Union persisted up until 1860. Oh, I'm trying to remember what year the American Civil War started. I think it started in 1861. And what happened was President Abraham Lincoln, having just been elected in 1860, signed his famous Emancipation Proclamation freeing the slaves. And that led to the southern states, ostensibly, it was a revolt. They said, we no longer want to be part of the United States. But they were economically linked to the United States. And the United States, under Lincoln's leadership, considered the Union to be indissoluble. And so we had a civil war, brutal civil war. I think it's over 100,000 American men, young men, killed in prosecuting that war. And I will, LJ. LJ's asked me to speak about the artwork, and I will. I love this painting. It's a painting, but that's a print. I'm started to. It's by a gentleman named Les Tait, Les Tait, Tait, and it's called Old Bill's Place. That's the name of the artwork. I saw it at an auction. I bought it. Oh my gosh. Um, in my 20s. It's been around. It's a 30. It came into my possession 30 odd years ago. And yeah, old Bill's Place by Les Tait. And that would be um, Old Bill's Place. You can actually find it. That diner You can, that's down where the Toronto Sun newspaper used to have its offices. And you can find that building in Toronto Archive pictures. And that would have been probably 1978, give or take, looking south. And that's King Street, where that old dilapidated building is. And that now King Street is super developed. You've got Roy Thompson Hall, you got office towers, you got the CBC building, you got tons of stuff there. But back in this area, it was like an industrial wasteland. Uh, anyway, and I've got this on Top Chat. I need to go to Live Chat. So, in a fashion, the link that we have with the United States of America right now, we're behaving like a state that is having its transfer payments from Washington cut off. Like in Canada, we provinces receive transfer payments from the federal government. And likewise, US states receive federal money for this, that, and the other thing. And right now, we are acting like a state already. All our governors or premiers are going down to Washington, D.C. as part of Team Canada to try and get the Americans to walk back their tariff on steel and aluminum coming in from any source that isn't American, whether it be Canada, China, wherever. Trump is seeking to revive the US steel industry. And in order to do that, what he is doing is he is anyone importing aluminum or steel into the United States will have to pay a 25% tariff, duty, tax to the American government. It's not going to affect Canadian consumers. That US tariff is not going to affect Canadian consumers. It can impact, obviously, our steel and aluminum industry because the US is the world's biggest economy. They buy a lot of our stuff. But the US is a sovereign country and they have the right to decide the rules of the game by which they're going to allow steel and aluminum into their country or anything else. We tend to think that free trade is the way the world operates. Well, yeah, we're not the same country as the US. If they want to impose a tariff on us, that is absolutely 100% their right. And why is Trump doing it? Why does Trump want to revive the US steel industry? Why not buy it more cheaply from Canada or China or other countries rather when making it yourself is more expensive? Well, I think it has a lot to do with security. You want let's just go right to the end of the game. If the United States was to end up in a war, steel and things like steel and aluminum are vital to the arms industry. And do you want to be beholden to foreign powers if you're in a war situation? And where are you going to get the steel for your tanks, your planes, your weapons, your armaments? Where are you going to get the metals? Think China's going to sell them to you? What about Canada? We're a close partner. Or is Canada at risk of being brought under the Chinese umbrella of influence? So, an important question to ask, especially when we've had CSIS, Canadian Security Intelligence Service, telling us that there has been foreign interference in our elections, how Liberal Party nominations have been inundated with Chinese students who have signed up for the Liberal Party and have foisted candidates. And it's called stacking the nomination. So, how worried is Trump about Canada's sovereignty over China? Look at what happened at our Winnipeg biolab, where I think it's 2 Chinese nationals were kicked out of the country. But no explanation has ever been given to this day. Nothing has been, no transparency. We don't know why they left. Let me catch up with what's being said. Cryptomeria says, my flag is up all year. Where was the rest of the country? Yeah, well, during the trucker convoy, people started to hate their Canadian flags. Not me. I was out on the overpass here as the convoy went by, waving a Canadian flag and a no more lockdown sign. MHR writes, I have two flags up and my F Trudeau sign. Cryptomaria says, sorry, I'm fussy about it. I was called far right bad names because it's up. Now it's cool. Oh, I know. I know. At least you're consistent. But the thing that worries me now is that I've spoken many times how the media is there to tell us what to think, tell us what to believe, tell us how to feel. So back during the trucker convoy, they were presenting the Canadian flag as something of a racist, far right, fringe, et cetera, symbol. Now the media, what they're telling us to think, believe, and how to feel about the Canadian flag is now they want us wrapping ourselves in it and to bleed maple syrup. And I have a natural reticence to go along with whatever narrative is being played out on the nightly news. And that is being, when you have all the parties singing in unison, singing from the same songbook. What did we have during COVID? What party came out against the mandates? What party came out against them? What party, you know, they were all the parties, even the conservatives, were all about keeping Canadians safe from the deadly coronavirus. All of them. That it was a universal message across party lines in Ontario. Conservative Doug Ford, was all in. And I like to give Pierre Poilievre some slack and, say, well, maybe he was just, playing the political game, not wanting to alienate a large segment of the Canadian, voting populace. It is politics after all. But at the same time, there was a universal message going out, regardless of party lines, that everything, anything, and everything was on the table to combat the deadly coronavirus. And I did not hear Pierre Poilievre or any other conservative politician, aside from maybe Maxime Bernier of the People's Party of Canada, coming out vociferously against the things like the vaccine passport. That should have been called out, but a lot of Canadians supported it. A lot of Canadians supported that. A lot of Canadians were thrilled to see a guy like me not allowed to sit down and have a coffee in a Tim Hortons. Good. Keep him out. He's going to kill me and he's going to kill my grandma. Force him to get that jab that doesn't stop infection or transmission. Danny's writing, that's why he is PPC. And the last two elections, actually, I had videos on here. I did some organizing for the PPC candidate in my riding in the last election. In 2019, I voted PPC. Frank Vaughan was the candidate in this riding, but I didn't get involved in the campaign in any way, shape, or form. And then in the 2021 election, Nathan Lang was the candidate in this riding, and I helped organize a downtown Brighton little meet and greet. I even introduced him. We had a guy playing the guitar. It was a nice little thing, and and I would say, people came out in the dozens. We probably had 4 or 5 dozen, maybe 50, 60 people came out and interacted with Nathan. Remember, this is September 2021. I mean, the only people coming out were those who were not afraid of the deadly coronavirus. Um, MHR is writing that she's kind of down with the merge, to be honest. Keep our sovereignty, but remove our border and have the same currency. Well, the thing is, this is something that, having lived in the United States, is I'm keenly aware of the fact that a New Yorker, someone living in Staten Island or Manhattan or Brooklyn, New York, has pressure. It's a world away from going down to Raleigh, North Carolina, or going down to Macomb, Georgia, or going down to Tallahassee, Florida. There's a world of difference, and likewise a world of difference from those in San Antonio, Texas. And that's a world away from someone living in San Diego or Los Angeles, California. Uh, you know, there are there you can people are very proud of their Texas heritage, of their Alaskan heritage, of their Hawaiian heritage, of their different heritages, while still being part of the United States of America. And um, basically, I see our sovereignty as being paper thin. We go lockstep with whatever the U.S. does when they approve the COVID jabs. In my eyes, my non-expert eyes, Health Canada just goes, "Where's our rubber stamp?" What did the FDA do? They said yes. There you go. It's approved. We don't do anything independent in this country. We just follow lockstep with the United States. So why don't we just stop the charade? We watch the same sports. Baseball, hockey. Canadians have Super Bowl parties now. How many people go to a Grey Cup party? Nobody goes to a Grey Cup party anymore. But the Super Bowl, we've become American in so many ways. And to me, the straw that broke the camel's back, that was 37 years ago in 1988 when we signed the free trade agreement with the United States and we switched our, economic our economic landscape from east west, north east west to north south. And now we're crying and whining. Well, you have to let us sell. You have to let us sell to you. You can't put restrictions on us. Well, are you a foreign country or are you a part of us? And this is the game that Trump is playing. You want access to our market? Join join our union. Become the 51st state. MHR, like me, I get into trouble too. She's saying, I'm definitely not opposed to the 51st state. A lot of people get mad at me because I'm really kind of hoping it happens. We're called North Americans. Um, Danny prefers the Grey Cup to the Super Bowl, and God bless you, at least you spelled it right. Half the people I see spelling Grey Cup right, Gray. It's named after a former Governor General of Canada. I forget the first name. I think he was an Earl. I forget. Danny is on for the 51st state as well. We could. Texans fly their flag. Texans in particular, because Texas for a time was a republic unto itself. It was not always. It wasn't like a colony or what. It was the independent republic of Texas, and they fought a war with the Spanish Mexicans under General Santa Anna. Um, Cryptomeria says that he loves the Seattle teams. The Mariners Stadium is something bigger than I ever imagined. I've never been to Seattle. I used to live in Portland, Oregon, just south, but I made it to Spokane, made it to a few spots in Washington State, but never as far as Seattle. But I've been all across the United States, all the way from Portland, um, coast to coast. I've been in California, Washington, and Oregon. I've been in all three West Coast states: New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, Virginia. I've been all over the U.S. Been down to Florida, uh, and it's a very regionalized country like Canada. What does most Ontarians have in common with someone living in the Gaspésie de Quebec, là, or Chicoutimi, là, là. So, and Danny's writing, Expos, rest in peace. Yeah, I mentioned that in my last video that we've been integrating slowly. 1967 is the year that the Expos joined the National League, Major League Baseball. Then 10 years later, the Toronto Blue Jays joined. And now we've got the Toronto Raptors playing in the NBA. We had the Buffalo Bills were playing regular season games or preseason games. I can't remember. I think it was either preseason or regular season games at Toronto Skydome. There is so much integration. And right now we have a big advantage over Americans because our dollar's only worth kicking around 70 cents US. So it gives our producers of steel and aluminum an automatic advantage over the same products being produced in the United States. Wouldn't you love to have a US dollar? But I've got Danny writing Bills. Boy, I love losing Super Bowls. Oh, that's bad. Do you hear about Buffalo's new area code 044? Because they went to the Super Bowl 4 years in a row. And everyone remembers how Scott Norwood famously, had a chance to win the Super Bowl and failed. And there was a joke going around that, Scott Norwood was so upset that he'd missed that field goal that he decided to end his life. And he took a gun to his head, but missed wide right. Missed by that much, wide right. Bad joke. Shouldn't make jokes about God's ultimate gift. Do not throw it away ever. That's why I was so sad to hear about my cousin. Oh man. And anyway, but just to be clear, my cousin did not do that. My he died tragically, but it wasn't. It was not. Not he didn't take his own. Any loss of human life is tragic. But anyway, getting back to the issue at hand, I think, it annoys me. I genuinely think this rise in nationalism that we're seeing. I wonder at what's going on behind the curtain. Who are the players behind directing everything? And they're stirring up animosity between Canadians and America. Animosity is being stirred up between Canadians and Americans, and between Americans and the rest of the world. And I cannot help but think that the hand behind the curtain, the puppet master, if you will, if it's not the People's Party of China, because I've been reading a book on Stalin. I've been reading a biography on Stalin, and I've just gotten to the part prior to World War II breaking out. And Stalin was very happy at the prospect of signing a non-aggression pact with the Germans, and at the same time he was under no illusion that all of a sudden, that Germany and Russia would be friends, because fascism and communism are two different ideologies. And in the years leading up to World War II, they'd actually been the propaganda on both sides. The Russian or the Soviet propaganda machine was heavily anti-German, and the German propaganda machine was very incredibly anti-Soviet Union. And when they signed the non-aggression pact, the envoy, I can't Ribbenbolt or however you say the guy's name, German name, he wanted to blow up this new friendship and everything, and Stalin pulled him back and basically said, we've been, our propaganda machines have been crapping all over each other for the last, 10, 20 years. Are we all of a sudden going to start, pretending that none of that ever happened? We got to go a little slower. So Stalin was Yeah, he had his eyes wide open to what he was doing when he signed the non-aggression pact, but his thinking, revealed in his letters and in his um, notes and meetings that he had, commentary from those who were intimate with him, is that he thought it would was great to see the Nazi Germany blowing its brains out against the Western powers, against the British and the French. Hey, great, let them. It's what I've been talking about many times, is the fact that, well, the United States is embroiled in supporting the Ukrainians against Russia and supporting Israel against Iran. And the U.S. is blowing its brains out in all these, little skirmishes, and China can just sit back and wait and watch the U.S. get weaker and weaker and weaker, and then they get to come in as the world dominant player. And we're very much, to my mind, where things are looking very much like they did in the lead up to the First World War. And thank you, Danny, for the condolences. For what it's worth, I hadn't seen this cousin of mine for 25 or so years. So he actually lived in Russia. Um, Danny's writing that growing up, we called Russians Ruskies or Reds, but aren't Chinese technically Reds too? Yes. If you typically, actually, the word better red than dead, people used to say during the McCarthy era in the United States, but they also called them pinkos, pinko communists. So, red, yeah, yeah, it is synonymous with communism, but not so much anymore. That was a while ago. Now, what's happened in the world through our educational institutions, which I think have been infiltrated by Marxist ideology, ideologues, probably linked to China and to and formerly the old Soviet Union, is they managed to infiltrate our educational systems, and Marxist ideology is now all over campuses in the US, Canada, and probably Western Europe as well. That's where we get this whole idea of identity politics and, putting everyone into their little category, group identity. And it gets us fighting. It weakens us. It fractionalizes our society. A house divided against itself cannot stand, and China is sitting back and just waiting. And it's like the old Roman Empire. Many historians hold that the Roman Empire wasn't defeated from outside so much as it crumbled from within. There was no single dominant world power that could have militarily overthrown the Roman Empire, even as it was in decline, but it just started to crumble from within. And then even disparaging little groups like the Visigoths could come in because the house had crumbled. And that is what is happening to our Western world. And we've got this rise of Islamic fanaticism taking place in the world. We have a bit of a Trojan horse in certainly in Western Europe, definitely in Canadian urban centers, Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver, Calgary. The big cities have huge, well, I shouldn't say huge, that's overstating things, but there are large Islamic communities. And Islam is a religion that has been built by conversion at the point of a sword. Everyone knows that Muhammad, the founder of the Islamic faith, was a warlord, and that's their modus operandi. And in fairness, Christianity has also operated under that same dynamic. Christianity has also been horrible in terms of forced conversion. Converter will burn you at the stake, boil you in oil, torture you, put you on the rack. Horrible. things have been done in the name of Christ. The difference, though, is that here we are in 2025, and the broader Christian world repudiates that which went on. The broader Christian world, they say that was wrong. You don't do those kind of things in the name of the Prince of Peace. The Islamic world, though, doesn't have an issue. Does not have an issue with it. They embrace it. It's jihad. It's holy war. And once Islamic, always Islamic. And that should be scary if you live on the Iberian Peninsula in Spain and Portugal, because those were at one time they were part of the Islamic Caliphate during the old Arabian Empire. And I think Trump is a lot smarter than people give him credit for, and a lot smarter than I used to give him credit for. I used to be of the opinion that the man was not, he's just a bully. He knows how to get what he wants. But there is more there than meets the eye. I think there's a tendency for these smug liberal arts educated reporters to think that they're smarter than him. And yet he understands the arena better than they do. He's in the political arena now, and he's learned it incredibly well. Incredibly well. And they haven't. And anyway, just going to read up. Danny's writing. Rockefeller said about the education system he created, I want a nation of workers, not thinkers. In other words, indoctrination. The American and Canadian educational system was modeled after the Prussians, the way they used to train their soldiers. And it was to indoctrinate obedience and to teach, that's why they had bells, to, yes, sir, 3 bags full, sir. Sit down, shut up. And the educational system is particularly bad for boys. Not so much for girls, but particularly for boys, because boys, especially at a young age, need to move. The, the human body wasn't built to be at rest, except when you're sleeping. We're meant to be in motion. And little boys they like to touch, they like to get out, they like to move, and it's almost torturous what we do to boys. But we live in a world now where we've had this whole concept of toxic masculinity foisted on us. And now if we were to go into a conflict, oh my God, pardon me, but oh my goodness. Look at the teenage young 20-year-olds we have now with their man buns and their tats and their ear ring thingies and everything. It's super sensitive. Half of them are taking handfuls of anti-anxiety meds, and getting triggered by someone using the wrong pronoun. And you want to stick a semi-automatic rifle in this kid's hand, and he's gonna be going into conflict with those who say what you will about Hamas. Those they're men. Say what you want about the Israelis, they are men. Say what you want about the Russians or the Ukrainians, they are men. Over here, we have a bunch of our men. In a lot of cases, are a bunch of little girls. And war. And Danny's writing, getting back to what I was saying earlier, Trump had 4 years to learn. Oh, yes, he did. I think that 4-year hiatus may have very well been a blessing. It allowed him to ruminate and strategize and plan. He went in the first time as a New York City real estate tycoon, developer, who had learned that arena, and then he went into the entertainment industry and he'd learned that arena through his show the Apprentice, and now he was entering the political arena. And when he didn't when he started out in the real estate game, he had a lot of failures. He learned how to be successful. when he went into the entertainment field. I don't know that he had any failures. The only show I know that he had was The Apprentice, and I never watched it because I never liked Trump's personality. But he learned that environment, and now he had 4 years to hone his skills and to look back at what he did wrong, although he'll never admit he did anything. He himself, he never did anything wrong. I picked the wrong people, and they did the wrong things. Um, Trump see, but Trump also recognizes that if he admits any mistake, that the media, the left, the Democrats are going to jump all over him like a dog on a bone and go crazy over it. So he has to project strength and being right all the time, constantly. Otherwise, you show any sign of weakness, and the political hacks will have their knives out. Uh, Danny's writing Pavlov's dog, much. Long live homeschooling. Yeah. And Danny writes, our military needs the war fighters back, not the woke joke we have. Kids in Russia and China learn to disassemble and reassemble AKs. Our kids learn LGBTQ plus million genders. Yeah. Yeah. When World War II and World War One, when major conflicts broke out, Canadians were rough and tumble. I believe it was a British general who said that going into battle, he wanted British officers, American equipment, and Canadian soldiers. A lot of times, Canadian boys were farming boys, and they were tough, tough as nails. Not anymore. Not anymore. We've wiped out our agricultural sector by and large. And what agricultural sector still exists is factory farming. You no longer have owner operated farms in this country. It's all factory farming. Anyone owner operated farm is a hobbyist, a hobby farm. They do it as a hobby, not as their living. Precious few family farms left in this country, some in the dairy sector, you know, but people need to start going to their farmers markets and things like that. So I'm going to wrap it up at this point, but I'm telling you, Canada, we already are de facto the 51st state. We just don't realize it yet. We've got this red, white, or we've got this maple leaf illusion in front of us, and we think we have sovereignty. We gave that up in 1988 when we entered into that free trade agreement with the United States and later then with Mexico. And now we're crying because we can't sell our aluminum and steel into the US without them having to pay 25% more for it. It's not fair. Well, there's a way to remediate it. Become the 51st state. Have a US dollar. I was just talking to someone today at work. A woman came in. She had a walking cast on. I asked her what happened. She said she broke her leg down in Arizona, was on a walking trail, hit some rocks, slid, and her leg had to be operated on. She was amazed. She went to the hospital. She was taken straight in. Um, didn't have to wait at all. Raving about the American medical. Now, of course, she has insurance. They had travel insurance, so they're covered. And the American system has its flaws, but so does ours. And during the COVID era, one of the rationales for imposing draconian measures on everyone with these, soul crushing mandates was that, well, we have to save our health. It's a universal healthcare system, and and if you don't get that jab, you shouldn't be able to, access the healthcare system. In a private model, you wouldn't have that justification. Um, Danny's writing Gen Ed latchkey kid rule, 65 to 1980. I wasn't a latchkey kid myself. My mom didn't work. But the biggest reason for that was because we spent so much time living in the US. My mom was a registered nurse, and stayed home to look after the firstborn. And then I came along 2 years later, so she continued staying home. But she was planning to go back to work, but then we moved down to New York City, and then later to New Jersey. And then another one came along, and then we moved to Oregon. And by the time we got back to Canada, and now all of us were in school, she was like, I'll go back to work, but her accreditation had lapsed. She was no longer certified as a registered nurse. And she had to take a 1 year recertification course, but now she was kicking around the age of 40. And she just found it too darn hard because nursing is very physical work, especially when you're low on the totem pole, which she was going to be low on the totem pole. So you're talking about, moving patients and, rotating patients in bed and everything, very physical work, and she just couldn't handle it. And she did go back to work, but not in nursing. So from the time I was in grade until I was in high school, my mom was a stay-at-home mom, June Cleaver. Anyway, which makes me a real dinosaur. I've got MHR writing facts. Danny, the very last generation with guts. And we can't blame the kids. We can't blame the kids. It's not their fault. The kids are no different than we were. If we were growing up in today's world, being indoctrinated the way these kids have been, we'd be the same by and large. And even among the kids today, there are some outliers. There are some kids who are rough and tumble tough, but only out in, by and large, it's only out in small little communities like where I live. If you go into the city, they're all a bunch of woke, left, liberal crybabies. Yeah. Danny's writing hospitals empty and nurses danced on TikTok. You can't believe the media. And that's what, getting back to the theme of this post, the media is telling us to hate the United States the same way they, and to wrap yourself in the Canadian flag and to bleed maple syrup. Is that what you're telling me to do, media? Well, I'm going to give serious thought to, listening to the other side of what's being said and to weigh it in my own mind. And ultimately, so, I did spend, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with justice and liberty for all. My country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land of the pilgrim's pride, land where my fathers died. From every mountainside, let freedom ring. That's what we used to sing for, or say, that was the opening exercises when I was in grade one, two, three, four, grade six. And it's interesting that song, My Country Tis of Thee, is actually God Save the King or Queen, as the case may be. God save our gracious King, long live our noble King. God save the King, send him victorious, happy and glorious, long to reign over us. God save the King. And I think it was during the Revolutionary War. All the American revolutionaries knew the tune and knew the words to God Save the King. So they knew that tune. So they just took the same piece of music and added new lyrics, made new lyrics for it, and made it into My Country Tis of Thee. Tis of Thee. I think that's what it is. My Country Tis of Thee. I don't. And it's, uh, I know it's an uncomfortable topic because a lot of people are like, Trump derangement syndrome is real and it's programmed. People are programmed to hate Donald Trump and everything about him the same way they were programmed to follow stickers on the floor, wear a face diaper, and to be a professional pincushion getting a jab every 6 months for the same thing. But whatever. Uh, Cryptomeria, I like what you're saying. If we made it this far, we are bulletproof. Gen X are ruthless. That's what I am, right? 66, Gen X, just after the baby boomers. Um, I like that. Danny's writing Gen X, we turned 30 at age 10, and we are still 10 at age 50. Uh, Son and daughter raised Gen X style, Danny says. No snowflakes here. That's one thing I've let my, I won't go into it on here, but I'm doing my best to do Gen X style raising with my youngest, who, at my age, I'm going to be 59 this year, and he's 11. I'll be 59 before he turns 12. Wow. Uh, anyway, and Danny writes, Orange Man bad, anyone else better. It's difficult because a lot of people will shut you down the minute they hear that you're willing to give any defense whatsoever or to speak supportively in any respect about Donald J. Trump. Well, then they immediately shut you down as an idiot. You've got to be a moron. What Danny Orange Man bad. You stupid. You like Orange Man. You're dumb. I'm smart. I watch television. They tell me Orange Man bad. So nobody, and this is the mentality we have to put up with in this world. There are too many people who are addicted to the nightly news. I sound like Trump. They're addicted. Okay, the hand motions. He does the accordion thing. Yeah, the greatest thing. I should get a blonde wig with my MAGA hat. There, should get my MAGA hat and get blonde hair coming out, and then and work on my impression a little more, and then be a Trump impressionist. Do speaking engagements. Although not now. Now they'll any career as or any attempt to be a Trump impressionist, Trump impersonator, do corporate gigs or whatever, has just flown out the window in Canada because everyone is programmed to hate him. So, anyway, God bless. Didn't get too much onto faith tonight. Uh, I always touch on it a bit, but I always like to have my videos with a blessing from the Book of Numbers. I'm going to give the truncated version of it, the one that I hear when I'm in church sometimes. Danny's writing, Jesus is King, and he is. And I said in my last video that no one is going to get saved over the internet. It's not the way it happens. But it can plant a seed. It can plant a seed. And if you take away anything from this video, at the end of the day, when I was thinking about this earlier, is the fact that Paul wrote so many letters to the churches, to the church at Corinth, to the church at Ephesus, to the church at Caesar Philippi, to the church at Rome. You have all these letters to these varying congregations in disparaging locations. And the thing is, you were not a Corinthian, you were not an Ephesian, you were not a Roman, you were not I'm trying to think of all the Philippian, Ephesian, Roman, Corinthian. You were a Christian, you were a follower of Christ. If you read the opening to the book of the first Corinthians, which is right after Romans. Let me read the opening to it. I was reading this today at lunch. Romans. It's right after Romans. First Corinthians. So after a standard greeting, I appeal to you, brethren, by the name. I'm reading from the first letter of Paul to the church at Corinth, Corinthians, and this is chapter 1, verse 10. Danny always likes to read along. He likes to know chapter and verse reference. I appeal to you, brethren, by the name of our Lord Jesus Christ, that all of you agree, and that there be no dissensions among you, but that you be united in the same mind and the same judgment. For it has been reported to me by Chloe people, by Chloe's people, that there is quarreling among you, my brethren. What I mean is that each one of you says, I belong to Paul, or I belong to Apollos, or I belong to Cephas, or I belong to Christ. Is Christ divided? We're not American, if you are a Bible believing Christian, well, then whether you're American, Canadian, European, whether you're living anywhere, we're to be united in Christ. We're not to be divided. So, especially to my American friends and to those who watch this channel, like Hank and, I can't remember, C.O. Jamalik and Brett Skinner and others who are American, know that not all Canadians have any animosity to you whatsoever, and especially no animosity, as brothers and sisters in Christ. And if the United States wants to impose a tariff on steel coming into your country, that's fair enough. I don't think that Canada should reciprocate. I think we should seek alternative markets for our exports. Well, we got to stop whining and crying, but that's the world we live in. So God bless, and I'll end it with the standard. May the Lord bless and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you. And even in these troubling times, and especially in these troubling times, may the Lord grant you peace, and he will. The offer is there, not from me, but from him. Get into relationship, get into his word. So we'll see y'all tomorrow night, and I'll talk about tomorrow. I'll get back to the political landscape in Canada and how 14-year-olds are going to have a role to play in picking Canada's next prime minister. Insane Liberal Party. So talk to y'all then. Danny Cryptomeria, weren't to MHR. I think that covers just about everyone. LJ, it was good seeing you here as well. I don't like missing names when I think I got them all. All right. God bless. We'll see you all tomorrow night, hopefully. And if not, it's okay too. Big snowstorm coming. So we'll see what happens. Night all.